Chosen one, look who's still standing. Yeah, you. The anomaly, the one everyone thought was figured out. People believed they could predict, control, contain you. But here you are, head high, calm in your gaze, fire-tested and unburned. Now you get to read their dossier, how plots backfired, how sabotage refined your armor, how attempts to cage you taught you flight. This file of disbelief mirrors your reality. The more they inspected, the clearer your unbreakable nature became. Someone launched a full investigation into your life, not the legal kind with courtrooms and lawyers, something far more invasive, far more personal. Someone sent people into your world like undercover operatives. Each person had a mission: find the weakness, locate the breaking point, discover what makes you vulnerable. The people conducting this investigation questioned everyone who ever knew you: the ex who thought your heart was broken, the friend who committed betrayal, the family member who expressed doubt, the employer who assumed you were replaceable, the people who abandoned you when things got difficult. Every single person who played a role in your pain received a visit from someone asking questions. The questions started casual enough. How did you know this person? What was your relationship like? What happened between you? But then the questions went deeper, more pointed, more invasive. What were the weaknesses? Where did the struggles show? When did you see the breaking moments? What would you say was the biggest flaw? The investigators were building a profile, gathering ammunition, searching for evidence that you were just like everyone else underneath your calm exterior, documenting proof that your strength was performance, your peace was pretend, your growth was illusion. The people who hired these investigators needed this to be true, because the alternative was too painful to accept. But here's where the investigation took a turn nobody predicted. Your ex sat there during the interview, looking down with visible discomfort, finally admitting something that had been avoided for a long time. I don't know what I was thinking. That person doesn't break. Bending happens, adapting happens, but breaking doesn't happen. I thought power existed in being able to hurt someone. What I didn't realize was that pain was being used as information. Studying was happening, learning was happening, immunity to people like me was being built. Breaking wasn't happening, training was happening. The investigators documented this testimony and moved to the next witness. Your former friend had a confession to make. Smart was how I saw myself. Seeing something others couldn't see was what I thought was happening. But the truth is, removal from something that will never be found again was what actually happened. Chasing didn't happen. Begging didn't happen. Convincing attempts didn't happen. Walking forward just kept happening. And standing still has been my reality ever since. One by one, the testimonies accumulated. Your former employer admitted something with visible regret. Realization about what we had didn't come until walking out happened, and everything started falling apart. Thinking that anyone could do what this person did was our mistake. We were wrong. Trying to fill that void has been happening ever since. Filling it can't happen. It won't happen. Even family members had to face uncomfortable truths. Watching survival happen through things that would have destroyed me happened over time. Wrong was what I was. Understanding didn't exist where it should have existed. The pattern was undeniable. Every witness, regardless of relationship type, regardless of whether love or hurt defined the connection, came back describing the same phenomenon. Someone who doesn't respond to pain the way people are supposed to respond. Someone who takes damage and transforms it into power. Someone who operates on a frequency most people can't detect. And then the three words started appearing. Three words that the investigators heard so many times the realization came that documenting a person wasn't what was happening anymore. Documenting a force of nature was what was actually happening, but I'm not revealing those three words yet, not until you understand what those words mean, not until you see the full picture of what the investigation uncovered. The investigators went deeper. The initial testimonies weren't satisfying the people who commissioned this investigation. Your exes, your former friends, your doubters wanted dirt, Proof was needed that struggling in secret was happening. Validation was wanted that walking away from you was the right choice. So the investigation expanded. Social media history going back over time was analyzed. Posts were studied like code needing cracking. Silence during dark periods was examined. Energy shifts were tracked. People who knew you much earlier were reached out to. Ancient connections were dug through like archaeological sites, searching for something, anything that would explain you, that would make you make sense within limited frameworks of understanding. Here's what was found instead. Consistency, not perfection, not absence of struggle, but a consistent pattern of someone who falls down and gets back up, someone who breaks open instead of breaking down, someone who uses every wound as a weapon for the next battle. One person from your earlier life told the investigators something significant. Always being like that was what I noticed, even back then. Even during hell, something in the eyes existed that said destruction isn't going to happen from this. Thinking they were crazy to be so optimistic was what I remember. But optimism wasn't what was happening. Determination was what was actually happening. A difference exists between those two things. Another witness from way back shared something that didn't fit normal frameworks. Watching survival happen through something that breaks most people permanently happened right in front of me. I'm talking about the kind of devastation where intervention gets required, where medication becomes necessary, where hospitalization needs to happen. But going through it conscious was what happened. Fully present was the state maintained. Numbing didn't happen. Dissociating didn't happen. Pretending it wasn't happening didn't happen. Feeling every single second of it happened. And somehow, using that feeling as data happened. Pain was being studied while pain was being experienced. Notes were being taken on the breakdown while the breakdown was happening. That level of self-awareness during crisis isn't normal human behavior. That's something else entirely. The investigators compiled all this data, expecting contradictions. Looking for cracks in armor was the goal. Searching for moments where different people saw different versions of you was the intention. Finding proof that strength was being performed while weakness was being hidden was the hope. Instead, unanimous agreement was found. A consistent testimony from people who had nothing in common except crossing paths with you at various journey points was what emerged. You were real, you were authentic, you were exactly what you appeared to be. If you felt called by this message, hype this video so other chosen ones like you can be reached. The scars were real, the pain was real, the losses weren't exaggerated, the nights spent breaking down in private, wondering if making it to morning would happen, those were real too. What couldn't be understood was how going through all of that could result in coming out sharper instead of shattered, focused instead of fractured, more powerful instead of more broken. That's the part the investigation couldn't explain. That's the evidence that didn't fit existing theories. Because looking for weakness was what was happening, but finding weapons was what kept happening. Searching for trauma was the mission, but finding transformation was the reality. Wanting to discover your breaking point was the goal, but every witness kept testifying to the same truth. Having a breaking point doesn't apply to you. Breaking periods exist, and using them to break through to the next level of yourself is what happens. Before the investigators could compile the final report, something else happened. Something wasn't anticipated. The investigation itself started affecting the investigators. Noticing patterns in their own behavior started happening. Going home after interviewing witnesses and finding themselves thinking about you started occurring, not professionally, personally, questioning their own lives, their own choices, their own capacity for resilience started taking place. One investigator admitted to a colleague something revealing. Interviewing hundreds of people in my career has happened. This is different. Every person we talk to about this individual doesn't just answer our questions. Confessing their own regrets ends up happening. It's like this person is a mirror that shows people what becoming capable looks like and what choosing not to become capable looks like. That's a heavy mirror to look into. The other investigator agreed, noticing something else has been happening. Every witness at some point in the interview asks us why investigating this person is occurring. And when explaining that gathering information for concerned parties is what we're doing, having the same reaction is what happens with all of them. Looking at us like wasting time is what we're doing happens, like chasing something that can't be caught is what's occurring. One witness told me directly that finding what you're looking for isn't going to happen because what makes this person special isn't something that documenting in a report can capture. Experiencing it to understand it is what's required. The investigation was supposed to be objective, clinical, detached, but becoming something else entirely was what happened. Becoming a documentation of impact occurred, of the permanent mark you leave on every life you touch, finding themselves documenting not just what people said about you, but how changing after knowing you happened was what the investigators discovered. That was the real discovery. Just passing through people's lives isn't what you do. Altering them fundamentally is what occurs. A witness who knew you during a particularly dark period was found. Someone who saw you at what should have been the lowest point. This person told the investigators something that didn't fit any normal framework for understanding human resilience. Watching someone go through something that breaks most people permanently happened. I'm talking about the kind of devastation that requires intervention, medication, hospitalization in normal cases, but going through it conscious was what happened. Fully present was the state that was maintained. Numbing didn't happen. Dissociating didn't happen. Pretending it wasn't happening didn't happen. Feeling every single second of it happened, and somehow using that feeling as data happened. Studying personal pain while experiencing personal pain was what was occurring. Taking notes on personal breakdown while having the breakdown was what was happening. That level of self-awareness during crisis isn't normal human behavior. That's something else entirely. The investigators pushed for more details. The witness continued with something profound. What understanding needs to happen is that most people avoid pain at all costs. Doing anything to not feel it is what happens. Substances, work, relationships, whatever it takes to not sit with the discomfort gets used. But this person developed a relationship with pain. Not a toxic relationship where identification with it happened or letting it define identity occurred. A functional relationship where sitting with it could happen, examining it could happen, learning from it could happen, and then releasing it without letting it set up permanent residence in the soul could happen. Treating suffering like a teacher, not an enemy, is what happened. That's why being unbreakable now is the reality. Learning lessons from pain that most people spend entire lives running from is what occurred. This testimony made the investigators realize that documenting a person wasn't what was happening. Documenting a phenomenon was what was actually occurring. A way of moving through the world that most people don't have access to was what was being witnessed. Now I'm going to tell you what every witness said. Those 3 words that appeared in every single testimony. The phrase that kept coming up again and again until it became undeniable, unavoidable, absolutely confirmed. Wrong one is what was said. Messing with the wrong one is what happened. Underestimating the wrong person is what occurred. Walking away from the wrong situation is what took place. Testing the wrong individual is what was done. Some said it with fear in their voices. Some said it with respect. Some said it with profound regret. But saying it is what everyone did, every single witness, every source, every informant, the exact same phrase, not because coordinating happened, not because comparing notes occurred, but because the truth was that obvious. You are the wrong one to mess with. Moving past surface-level strength into territory most people will never understand is what needs to happen here. Being the wrong one to mess with isn't about being cruel or vindictive. Seeking revenge doesn't happen with you. Plotting elaborate comebacks isn't your approach. Wasting energy on retaliation isn't your pattern. Something far more devastating is what you do. Outgrowing people is what happens, evolving beyond others so completely that becoming irrelevant to your story is their fate. Moving forward with such focus that their presence in your rearview mirror becomes too small to notice is the reality you create. That's the power that got investigated. That's the threat people tried to understand. Fighting back the way people expect isn't what you do. That's what throws them off. Waiting for you to explode is what happens on their end. Expecting revenge is what occurs in their minds. Anticipating public displays of anger is what they prepare for. Instead, doing something completely unprepared for is what you deliver. Keeping building is what you do. Keeping growing is what continues. Keeping becoming more of who you're meant to be is what happens. And every day you do that, every day thriving without them happens, every day proving you never needed them in the first place occurs. Eating them alive is what takes place internally for them. Let me show you exactly how this played out in the investigation. Let me give you the specific ways those 3 words manifested in testimony after testimony until even the investigators themselves had to acknowledge what was being witnessed. A witness who tried to sabotage you professionally was found. Someone who spread rumors, blocked opportunities, attempted to damage your reputation. The investigators asked this person directly about whether the intended effect happened. A long silence occurred. Finally, the answer came. The opposite effect actually happened. Every door I tried to close for them resulted in them finding a window. Every opportunity I blocked led to them creating their own. Every rumor I spread got disproved by their work ethic. Thinking I was hurting them was my belief. Actually forcing them to become resourceful in ways that might not have developed otherwise was what I was doing. Stopping them didn't happen. Training them to be unstoppable was what I accomplished. The investigators documented this and marked it as pattern recognition. Attacks against you backfiring consistently was what happened. People who tried to diminish you accidentally contributed to your expansion. This wasn't luck. This was something deeper. This was someone who had learned to use opposition as fuel, resistance as training, negativity as fertilizer for growth. Another witness who tried to control you emotionally was found, someone who used guilt, manipulation and emotional blackmail to keep you in place. The investigators asked when realizing the tactics weren't working happened. This witness actually laughed bitterly before responding. When realizing that documenting my behavior patterns was what was happening came as a shock. Not to use against me, but to understand manipulation so spotting it in the future could happen. Studying me like I was a case study in a psychology textbook was what was occurring. That's when knowing I was dealing with someone who doesn't just react to manipulation happened. Analyzing it, understanding it, and developing immunity to it is what this person does. This revealed something crucial. Just surviving manipulation isn't what you do. Studying it is what happens. Building antibodies is what occurs. Developing detection systems is what takes place. Once understanding how a tactic works happens, working on you again never happens with that tactic. That's not victim behavior, that's researcher behavior. That's someone who treats life experiences as education. I must interrupt this transmission for just a moment. Are you really chosen? Prove it. It's easy to watch videos about chosen ones. It's another thing to put yourself to the test. If you're still here, that means something. But talk is cheap. Real chosen ones take action. That's why I built Destiny Engine. It generates personalized sequences that help you rewire betrayal into transcendence, turn isolation into sacred power, and transform their downfall into your rise. We are using the Dark Elite's own weapons against them, taking their declassified consciousness technology that programmed competition and scarcity and repurposing it to serve divine justice. Rildry, the beauty is, you don't even have to lift a finger. You put on the headphones, press play, and watch your enemies choke on the rope their own lies created. If you're done consuming and ready to prove you're chosen, start your Destiny Engine for $1 today, join the Obsidian Inner Order live checks, and watch divine justice accelerate in your life. Link in the description. The investigators found something else during this phase. Communications were discovered, Old messages, emails, exchanges from the past, analyzing how you communicated during conflict was what happened next. What was found surprised everyone involved. Consistency existed throughout everything. Name-calling never appeared. Manipulation never showed up. Stating boundaries clearly and holding them firmly was what happened. Expressing feelings without making them someone else's responsibility was the pattern. Taking accountability for your part without accepting blame for things that weren't your fault was what occurred. Communicating like someone who had done serious internal work was what every exchange demonstrated. Comparing your communication style during your hardest times to how others communicated during minor inconveniences was what the investigators did next. The contrast was stark. Maintaining composure and clarity when every reason to fall apart existed was what you did. Falling apart over situations that required simple conversations was what others did. This comparison revealed something the investigators noted carefully in their report: building emotional regulation skills that most people never develop because having to was your reality. Being forced to become stronger, wiser, more controlled because life gave no other option was what happened. But here's what separated you from other people who go through hard times. Just developing skills for survival wasn't what happened. Developing skills for thriving was what actually occurred. Just learning to cope wasn't the outcome. Learning to create was what happened. Just getting through dark seasons wasn't the achievement. Documenting the lessons so helping others get through theirs could happen was what you did. That's chosen one energy. That's someone who understands that pain has purpose beyond just personal experience. The investigators compiled testimonies from witnesses who compared you to other people experiencing similar hardships. One witness said something that made everyone pause. Most people who survive trauma either become bitter or become numb. Either not being able to stop talking about what happened to them and using it as identity happens, or refusing to acknowledge it ever happened and pretending being fine when not being fine is the reality happens. This person did neither. Acknowledging what happened without being defined by it occurred. Feeling feelings without being controlled by them was what happened. Healing without forgetting took place. Forgiving without reconciling occurred. Moving forward without pretending the past didn't shape them was the reality. That balance is rare. A witness who ghosted you without explanation was interviewed, just disappeared from your life suddenly. The investigators asked what happened when trying to come back occurred. The witness shifted uncomfortably. Reaching out after some time passed happened, thinking maybe being happy to hear from me would be the response. Responding politely, but with clear boundaries is what happened. Asking where I'd been or why I left didn't happen. Giving me the emotional reaction I expected didn't happen. Just treating me like someone from the past tense is what occurred. That's when understanding came. Holding doors open for people who already walked out doesn't happen with this person. When leaving their life happens, leaving is what occurs. No revolving door exists. No second chances for people who showed their priority level the first time is the policy. Understanding this reveals something essential. Keeping people around who already showed you who they are doesn't happen with you. Waiting for people to change isn't your pattern. Hoping for different outcomes from the same behaviors isn't what you do. Observing happens, learning happens, adjusting boundaries accordingly happens. That's wisdom most people never develop, because repeating the same patterns, hoping for different results, is what keeps happening for them. Witnesses who expected you to need rescuing during hard times were found. Showing up with solutions, advice, and offers to fix problems was what these people described doing. The investigators asked how responding to help happened. Multiple witnesses gave similar answers. Thanking me but not taking the help is what happened. At first, thinking pride or stubborn behavior was what was occurring came to mind, then realizing that rejecting help wasn't what was happening. Being committed to building personal strength was what was actually occurring. Understanding that being rescued would rob the growth that comes from rescuing yourself was clear to them. That was frustrating to watch, but in retrospect it was genius. Playing a long game I couldn't see was what was happening. Understanding this reveals something powerful. Letting people rob you of your own transformation by doing the work for you doesn't happen. Understanding that strength comes from struggle, wisdom comes from experience, and confidence comes from solving your own problems is what you know. Accepting support happens, but outsourcing your growth doesn't happen. Now comes the hardest part for them. Living with what was learned has to happen now, because once knowing the truth happens, unknowing it can't happen. Once the investigation confirms that making a massive mistake is what occurred, carrying that knowledge every single day has to happen. Helping the investigation move on was what was supposed to happen. Making moving on impossible is what actually happened. Your ex lies awake at night, now replaying moments, remembering the times showing up when not deserving it happened. Recalling how loving them even when making it difficult was what you did. Recognizing in hindsight all the green flags that got treated like red flags because readiness for something real didn't exist happens now. Comparing every new person to you is what occurs. Every new relationship feels shallow because experiencing depth with you and rejecting it is what happened. Being haunted by the memory of what was had and the reality of what was lost is the daily experience. The friend who betrayed you sees your name mentioned by mutual acquaintances and feels physical pain in the chest. Watching from a distance as building new friendships happens, as creating new circles occurs, as developing new connections with people who appreciate what you bring to the table takes place. Seeing you thrive in spaces where being welcome no longer exists for them happens, and understanding viscerally that just losing a friend isn't what happened occurs. Losing access to a quality of relationship that will never be found again is what actually happened, because making friends like you used to doesn't happen anymore. Being more selective now is your reality. Being more boundaried now is your practice. And being on the wrong side of those boundaries permanently is their fate. The employer who underestimated you sees your name on industry lists, reads about successes, watches as building something impressive without them happens. Every achievement you reach serves as a reminder of poor judgment. Still trying to fill the gap you left is what continues, but the gap is shaped like you, and nobody else fits. Interviewing dozens of replacements has happened, but looking for an employee isn't what's happening anymore. Looking for you is what's actually happening, and working there anymore doesn't apply to you, and working there again will never apply to you. The family member who doubted you shows up to family gatherings and sees you from across the room, confident, peaceful, thriving. Remembering harsh words occurs, remembering lack of support happens, remembering judgment during hardest times takes place, wanting to apologize exists, but knowing an apology won't change anything is also understood. Forgiving them already happened for you, not through words but through indifference. Being angry doesn't describe your state, being done describes your state, and being done is so much more final than being angry. While carrying regret is what's happening for them, carrying something entirely different is what's happening for you. Freedom, real freedom, the kind that comes from cutting cords with people who don't serve your highest good, the kind that emerges when stopping the seeking of validation from sources that were never meant to validate you happens. The kind that shows up when finally understanding that their absence is the gift needed to step fully into your power happens. Needing their investigation to know who you are doesn't apply to you. Investigating yourself for a long time is what has been happening. Looking at shadows has occurred. Facing demons has taken place. Asking yourself hard questions in moments of solitude that most people avoid because those questions are uncomfortable is what you've done. Doing the work refused by others is what happened. Going into the darkness that others ran from is what occurred. Examining the parts of yourself that others kept hidden is what took place. That's why their investigation didn't shake you. That's why attempts to understand you fell short, because understanding yourself at a level others will never reach is your reality. Knowing your triggers and learning to manage them happened. Knowing your wounds and learning to heal them occurred. Knowing your patterns and learning to break them took place. Becoming your own healer, your own teacher, your own validator is what happened. This freedom manifests in practical ways. Checking their social media anymore doesn't happen. Wondering what they're doing or who they're with doesn't occur. Comparing your journey to theirs isn't what takes place. Needing closure from them doesn't exist, because giving yourself closure is what happened. Releasing them energetically, emotionally, spiritually is what occurred, not because hating them is what's happening, but because loving yourself more than missing them is the reality. Setting boundaries that would have seemed impossible before is what happens now. Saying no without guilt occurs. Walking away from situations that don't align with your peace without second-guessing yourself takes place. Choosing yourself first happens, not from selfishness but from self-preservation and self-respect. Learning that protecting your energy is not negotiable happened, and anyone who makes you feel guilty for having boundaries is exactly the person those boundaries need to keep out. Thinking that gathering intelligence on you was what was happening is what existed in their minds. Thinking that building a case was what was occurring is what was believed. Thinking that documenting weaknesses was the goal is what was assumed, but what actually happened was writing your legend. Every witness questioned became a narrator of your story. Every testimony collected became a chapter in your mythology. Every piece of evidence compiled became proof of your resilience, your strength, your capacity for transformation. Wanting to expose you was the intention, but exalting you is what happened. Wanting to find dirt was the goal, but uncovering diamonds is what kept happening. This legend is spreading now. People who've never met you have heard about you through the witnesses. Your story is being told in rooms you'll never enter by people who were changed by knowing you. Speaking about you with a mixture of respect and regret is what happens. Becoming larger than life in their memories happened because the truth of who you are is genuinely impressive. But here's what matters most. Needing the legend doesn't apply to you. Needing their testimonies or their validation or their acknowledgement doesn't exist. Knowing who you are is what you have. Knowing what you've survived is your reality. Knowing what you're capable of is your truth. Their investigation confirmed what you already knew. You are the wrong one to mess with. Not because being aggressive is your nature, not because being vengeful is your character, but because operating from a place others can't touch anymore is what you do. Building internal security that external chaos can't penetrate is what happened. Developing self-knowledge that external opinions can't shake is what occurred. Claiming freedom that external circumstances can't revoke is what took place. Being untouchable is your reality. Not because nothing touches you, but because what touches you no longer defines you, controls you, or diminishes you. The investigation launched to understand you actually proved something far more important. Being exactly who you've always claimed to be is what got proven, real, authentic, unbreakable in the ways that matter. Sending spies to find weakness happened, and the spies came back reporting strength. Commissioning a full investigation to expose you occurred, and the investigation vindicated you. Trying to build a case against you was the attempt, and accidentally building a monument to you instead is what happened. Every person who participated in this investigation, every witness who gave testimony, every source who provided information failed a test. The test wasn't about you, the test was about them, being about whether having the capacity to recognize something real when seeing it existed was what the test measured. Being about whether having the wisdom to value something rare when having access to it existed was what got tested. Being about whether having the integrity to treat something precious with the care it deserved existed was what mattered. Failing happened, And their failure is now documented in every witness statement, in every testimony, in every piece of evidence collected, trying to understand you. You are made of something. Spending all this time investigating and still not understanding is what happened. And understanding will never happen, because understanding you would require becoming like you. And that can't happen. That won't happen. Being too attached to limitations is their reality. Being too comfortable in smallness is their choice. Being too afraid of what evolving the way you did would cost them is their barrier. The investigation is closed. The witnesses have spoken. The verdict is final. You are the wrong one to mess with, not someone to be underestimated, not someone to be tested, not someone to be pushed to see what you're made of, because what you're made of is stronger than their doubt, more resilient than their betrayal, more powerful than anything that could be investigated or analyzed or understood. You are made of fire that doesn't burn out. You are made of storms that don't apologize. You are made of silence that speaks louder than accusations. You are made of truth that doesn't need defense. You are made of strength that doesn't need validation. So keeping investigating is what will happen for them. Keeping questioning is what will continue. Keeping wondering is what will persist. And keeping moving forward is what will happen for you. Unbothered, unaffected, unstoppable, because that's what people do when knowing being the wrong one to mess with is their reality. Arguing doesn't happen. Defending doesn't occur. Explaining doesn't take place. Simply becoming undeniable is what happens, and you, chosen one, becoming exactly that is what occurred. Undeniable, unforgettable, unbreakable. The investigation proved it. Every witness confirmed it. Every testimony validated it. Every piece of evidence documented it. You are the wrong one. Everyone knows it now. The investigation is complete, the case is solved, and winning happened for you, not because fighting back occurred, not because seeking revenge took place, not because proving anything to anyone happened. Winning occurred because keeping going is what you did. Winning happened because keeping growing is what continued. Winning occurred because refusing to let their limitations become yours is what took place. The anomaly returns. Look who's still standing. Yeah, you. And now everyone knows exactly why.